In the parched, desolate Arctic mountains and forests, the freezing wind swept gravel across the sheer cliffs. I hid inside a concealed stone cave, my whole body chilled to the bone. I am Li Fan. After struggling through 8 years of the apocalypse, leading a 9-man survivor squad, and fighting with everything I had to stay alive in this chaotic world, at this moment, we had fallen completely into a dead end. Fan Yuyu gritted her teeth as she bandaged Su Jiangwo's grotesque abdominal wound from a mutant beast, her voice thick with suppressed sobs and towering rage. Brother Fan, this mission has completely destroyed us. Xiaolu, Pizzi, Earl, Meow Meow, they're all gone. Su Jiangwo clenched his fists tightly. His dark face was drained of all color, and the severe wound to his abdomen made every movement unbearably painful. His eyes were bloodshot red. He came from a military background, and when the army collapsed during the Great Apocalypse evacuation, I saved him 8 years ago. After that, he followed me in forming the squad and never once shrank back through life and death. We endured countless zombie hordes and evaded countless mutant beasts. We were about to complete the mission and earn residency in Yinjing's inner city, no longer having to drift through the wilderness. His voice was hoarse, full of unwillingness and grief. Fan Yuyu suddenly flung away the blood-stained gauze, her emotions exploding completely. This was a trap from the start. The intel the officials gave us was all fake. They treated survivor squads like ours as cannon fodder. I'm sure of it. It was Yuan Ruoxue who sold us out. I stood at the entrance of the stone cave, my one eye fixed on the vast, barren Arctic wasteland, my heart cold as ice. Yuan Ruoxue, the woman I treated like a younger sister, the eldest miss of the Yuan family, granddaughter of Commander Yuan, a military big shot, was also the one who had strongly urged me to take this mission in the first place. She personally promised that as long as we completed the mission, she would secure stable inner-city survival rights for our whole team. Su Jiangwo immediately spoke up to stop her. He harbored the same doubts, but feared putting me in a difficult position. Don't make wild guesses. She's the captain's younger sister. She wouldn't harm us. Whenever the captain takes a mission, it's always for brothers like us who have no one to rely on. Fan Yuyu instantly calmed down, her tone full of guilt and desolation. Brother Fan, I'm not blaming you. Without you, I would have died back in the early days of the apocalypse. But this mission is too strange. A mission with such an extremely high level of secrecy should have been carried out by the military. Why did it fall to a survivor squad like ours? And this crystal in your hand. There was never any detailed mission briefing the whole time, yet it alarmed all 8 major bases, and even 7th-rank new humans from Shangjing came to fight over it. I lowered my head to look at the diamond-shaped crystal in my hand, about the size of a beer bottle. The crystal was transparent, and inside it was encased a black sphere the size of a pigeon egg, slowly flickering with an eerie faint light. In 8 years of apocalyptic life, I had braved countless brushes with death, lost one eye, and ended up covered in scars, yet never once spoke lightly of giving up. But at this moment, I truly felt despair. A 9-man squad, 8 years side by side, and now only 3 remained, all seriously wounded. We had fought desperately to break through the mutant beast's encirclement, shaken off pursuers from every side, only to fall into a trap in the end. It was as if our every move had been precisely monitored the entire time, and every sacrifice had become a bargaining chip in the games of those above. Suppressing the surging grief and fury in my heart, I turned to the only 2 brothers I had left and spoke in a low voice. Old Su, you, every mistake is mine. I was the one who stubbornly insisted on taking this mission and got everyone killed. When the enemy closes in later, break out to the south immediately and go settle at Liao Mountain. It's hidden and safe. Don't go back to Yinjing base. Live on well. Their target is the crystal in my hand. I'll hold everyone back. No way. If we leave together. Fan Yuyu immediately stepped to my side, her eyes resolute and unwavering. You saved this life of mine, and in this desperate situation, we will never abandon you and flee alone. Su Jiangwo also forced himself to stand up and echoed in a deep voice. We're all loners in this apocalypse. We've supported each other to survive until today. We're long past distinguishing between yours and mine. If we die together. Their sincere bond struck deep into my heart. In this chaotic world, this loyalty of never leaving each other behind was far more precious than any supplies or privileges. I was about to try persuading them again when a deafening roar suddenly exploded. An RPG shell blasted straight toward the stone cave, and the rock wall cracked and collapsed in an instant. All 3 of us were ability users, our reactions far beyond ordinary people, and we immediately rushed out of the cave. But the sight before us cut off all hope of survival. Outside the cave, nearly 100 school-rank ability users and new humans had us surrounded layer upon layer, their auras sharp, their equipment sophisticated. They carried the unmistakable bearing of soldiers exclusive to Yinjing's inner city, worlds apart from survivors like us struggling to stay alive in the wilderness. My icy gaze swept across the crowd as I asked in a low voice, "Are you Li Changjuan's men, or Commander Yuan's?" The crowd slowly parted, and a familiar figure stepped out, instantly shattering my last trace of wishful hope. It was Liao Yunfei, one of my team members. Just an hour ago, he had been fighting alongside us. I had watched with my own eyes as mutant beasts surrounded him, and I had thought he died in the line of duty long ago. "Brother Fan, hand over the crystal in your hand. They promised to spare our lives." Liao Yunfei's eyes darted away, not daring to meet mine, his tone carrying deliberate perfunctoriness. Su Zhengwo's eyes went wide with rage, his whole body trembling as he shouted furiously, "Liao Yunfei, so it was you. You leaked our whereabouts, you traitor." I was unusually calm. In 8 years of apocalypse, I had seen betrayal and greed too often. It was nothing more than benefits tempting enough for him to abandon all brotherhood. I didn't angrily question him. I only said coldly, "Xiaolu and the others, did you sell them out and get them killed?" Liao Yunfei retreated guiltily, not daring to answer, tacitly admitting all his sins. The chill in my heart spread through my whole body, and I said in an icy voice, "If you want the crystal, have Li Yuhang come and take it himself." Liao Yunfei's face was full of shock. "How did you know?" I ignored him, raised my eyes toward the depths of the crowd, and shouted, "Li Yuhang, I know you're here. Come out." A frivolous yet sinister laugh rang out, and a man in an exquisite combat uniform, with fair features but eyes full of malice, slowly walked out. It was Li Yuhang, son of Li Changjun, the power holder of Yinjing Base, and also my sworn enemy who had targeted and suppressed me for years. "Li Fan, why keep resisting to the bitter end?" Li Yuhang looked down at me condescendingly, his tone full of arrogance. "The mission is already over. Hand over the fire seed crystal obediently, and I can reward the 3 of you with inner city residency and give you a way to live." I let out a scornful laugh, my eyes full of mockery. "A way to live? You had this setup prepared long ago. You deliberately guided us into seizing the crystal, used my divine speed ability to draw the attention of all the bases, and waited until we were exhausted from breaking away, with casualties nearly wiping us out. Then you could reap the benefits without lifting a finger. You wanted to embezzle the crystal for yourselves and pin the blame of secretly hoarding the fire seed on our survivor squad." Li Yuhang admitted it openly, without the slightest attempt to conceal his malice. Lighting a cigar and leisurely taking a puff, his tone dripping with ridicule. "You are smart enough, I'll give you that. To be honest, your strength is passable. If you had behaved yourself, I might have kept you under my command. But you just had to indulge in wishful thinking and covet Ruoxue." A vicious smile curled on his lips, every word cutting to the heart. "Ruoxue is too soft-hearted to make a move against you, so I'll take care of it for her." This mission was also a fine use of resources, using your hand to get the crystal, then sending your entire squad to their deaths. My heart suddenly seemed to stop, and my whole body turned cold. Enunciating each word, I pressed, "You mean Ruoxue knew everything from beginning to end? She deliberately tricked me into taking this dead-end mission?" Seeing my pained loss of composure, Li Yuhang laughed even more wildly and cruelly. "Otherwise what? Did you really think that in this apocalyptic chaos, there was still affection that asked for nothing in return? How utterly stupid." The despair of shattered trust swept through my entire body. The loyalty, principles, and obsession I had held onto for 8 years shattered completely in this moment. The family I thought I had, the people I trusted, had personally pushed me and my brothers into a bottomless abyss. "Do it. Finish them." Li Yuhang had lost all patience and barked the order. Su Zhengwo erupted instantly, enduring the agonizing pain of his severe injuries as his entire body was covered in metallic armor, turning him into a silver-gray Iron Man. Roaring, he charged at the traitor Liao Yunfei. "I was blind to recommend you into the team, and today I'll clean house with my own hands." But burdened by grievous injuries, with less than 1/10 of his combat power left, he was no match for dozens of high-rank ability users. In only a few exchanges, a pitch-black crystal blade brutally pierced his chest. Su Zhengwo turned his head with difficulty and looked into my eyes, forcing out a relieved smile streaked with blood. "Captain, I'm sorry. I couldn't get rid of that trash. I'll go on ahead. The brothers are waiting for you down there." As his words fell, the metal ability instantly collapsed, and his burly body crashed to the ground with a thunderous thud, lifeless. I closed my eyes, and an endless sense of powerlessness completely drowned me. We had struggled with all our might to survive in the apocalypse, abiding by loyalty and holding fast to our bottom line. Yet in the end, we still could not escape the schemes of the powerful and the malice of the human heart. All our efforts, all our sacrifices, had become stepping stones for others to climb higher. Just as grief and rage were about to tear me apart, Fan Yu suddenly stepped forward 2 paces, shedding all her toughness. Revealing a weak and timid appearance, her voice soft and humble, "Young Masterly, I surrender. I am willing to be your servant, at your beck and call, so long as you spare my life." Her beauty was peerless, even after enduring the devastation of the apocalypse. She still had a slender figure and captivating features. Li Yuhang, who had long coveted her, instantly showed greed in his eyes and burst into laughter. A wise man submits to circumstances. "Come here and serve me well, and I'll guarantee you peace for the rest of your life." As he spoke, he eagerly reached out to wrap an arm around Fan Yu's waist. But the instant his fingertips were about to touch her, Fan Yu suddenly raised her head, and a fierce wind blade burst forth, slashing straight at Li Yuhang's neck. The distance was too close. There was no way to dodge. Li Yuhang desperately tilted his head aside to evade it. He barely avoided the fatal blow, but the sharp wind blade directly split open half his cheek, flesh turning outward in a gruesome sight. The intense pain instantly made Li Yuhang lose control. Staggering backward, he roared hysterically, "Bitch! How dare you trick me? Take her alive. I'll make your life worse than death." More than a dozen ability users swarmed forward. I rushed up to rescue her through my grief, but the others pinned me down tightly. By the time I fought desperately through the encirclement and reached Fan Yu's side, she was already covered in blood, teetering on the verge of collapse. 2 deep wounds on her chest, so severe the bone was visible, had pierced through her body. Her lungs were damaged, and her breathing was extremely faint. I caught her in my arms, and the last remaining biological ability within me surged out with all my strength, trying to keep her alive. But the crystal in my hand suddenly exerted force, frantically devouring my energy as fine cracks slowly spread across its surface. I immediately raised the crystal high and roared sternly, "If anyone dares take one more step forward, I'll destroy this fire seed at once." Everyone instantly became wary, and the tightening ring of encirclement abruptly halted, buying us a brief moment to catch our breath. Leaning in my arms, Fan Yu weakly raised her hand and gently touched the knife scar across my left eye that ran through my face. That was the permanent scar I had taken for her back then, forced upon me forever. Her eyes were full of tenderness and regret as she murmured softly, "Brother Fan, I've liked you for a long time. I've liked you ever since the day you saved me in the apocalypse. I've followed you through hardship and wandering all my life without ever regretting it. It's just a pity that I couldn't stay with you until the end. If there is a next life, you must find me earlier." My throat tightened with emotion as I held her tightly and rasped out a single word. "Okay. I'm so tired. Brother Fan, I'm going to sleep for a while. Remember, wake me up." With a faint smile of contentment on her lips, Fan Yu slowly closed her eyes and stopped breathing completely. She was one of the first to follow me, enduring from a delicate, rich young lady into an awe-inspiring powerhouse of the apocalypse, never leaving my side, staying with me through life and death. Yet in the end, she met such a fate. I carefully laid her flat on the ground, took off my already worn-out coat, and gently draped it over her. The moment I slowly stood up, I threw back my head and laughed wildly, the laughter both manic and desolate, echoing across the entire wasteland. The hideous knife scar on my face looked even more terrifying. "Ha! Li Yuhang, do you really think you've got me cornered?" Li Yuhang covered his bleeding cheek, his gaze vicious and twisted, and roared angrily, "An ant is still an ant in the end. Hand over the crystal, and I'll grant you a quick death." I stopped laughing, and all that remained in my eyes was deathly cold silence. Raising my hand, I clenched the cracked crystal tightly. "You want the fire seed, to fight for power and profit? Dream on." I raised my hand and smashed the crystal viciously against the rock beside me. The diamond-shaped crystal shattered instantly, and the black core sphere rolled out. Without hesitation, I grabbed it and threw it all into my mouth. If I can't have it, then no one else will either. I roared madly and instantly activated my final trump card innate ability, Divine Speed. My afterimage remained where I stood, while my body had already shot out, straight toward the Arctic abyss. That bottomless sinkhole revealed after the glaciers melted, a place no one had ever reached the bottom of, a dead end of utter doom. Everyone present erupted in complete uproar, and Li Yuhang, shocked and furious, sharply ordered a psychic ability user to track my whereabouts. He's at the end of his rope. Divine speed, fueled by all his life force, only carried him 1 kilometer. He's heading toward the Arctic abyss. Hurry and chase him. Li Yuhang's expression changed drastically at once, and he led his people in a frantic pursuit regardless of everything. By the time they arrived, I was already standing at the edge of the bottomless chasm, with a pitch-black abyss beneath my feet. I looked back at this apocalyptic world full of betrayal and slaughter, gave a miserable smile, and leapt, plunging into the endless abyss. Li Yuhang and the others stared fixedly at the entrance to the abyss, furious yet helpless. More than 10 minutes later, a military helicopter flew in low, and a heroic, cold beauty leapt down to the ground. Yuan Ruoxue wore a standard military uniform. Her face was stunning, her presence icy and imposing, and a chilling aura surrounded her. Her gaze locked coldly onto Li Yuhang as she asked, each word like ice, "Where's my brother?" Fearing the Yuan family's power, Li Yuhang was terribly guilty and could only force out a cover story. Li Fan was besieged by mutant beasts and accidentally fell into the abyss. The fire seed fell into the abyss with him, and I had no time to save him. Towering killing intent instantly burst from Yuan Ruoxue's eyes, and the surrounding temperature dropped sharply, the cold piercing to the bone. Her cousin Yuan Fanyun immediately stepped forward to stop her. "Stop. The urgent priority is to recover the fire seed. The forces from the other bases are already closing in. Internal strife must not ruin everything." Yuan Ruoxue clenched her fists tightly and said coldly, "This isn't over. For using me to scheme against my brother and causing the deaths of the entire team, I'll settle every single score once I recover the fire seed." As everyone kept arguing, no one noticed that at the bottom of the pitch-black abyss, a faint mechanical prompt quietly sounded. Fire seed project activated. Host detected in near-death condition. Main plan activation requirements not met. Backup rebirth protocol automatically initiated. Memory magnetic field loading. Progress 1%, 35%, 67%, 99%. Loading complete. Time anchor locked. September 21st, 2024. Rebirth initiated. The core of social order is law and rules. Class barriers breed both the good and evil in human nature. Law may not be able to restrain people's hearts toward goodness, but it can uphold the bottom line against wrongdoing. Of course, it certainly can't control students sleeping in class. A familiar yet distant lecturing voice drifted into my ears, carrying a hint of teasing amusement, instantly pulling my consciousness back. I suddenly opened my eyes, sprang to my feet with bloodshot eyes, and roared, "You want to use me and steal my crystal? No one will succeed." As soon as the words fell, the whole classroom went silent. A bright and tidy university classroom came into view. Clean glass windows, a clear projector, brand new desks and chairs, sunlight filtering gently through the glass, warm and peaceful. At the podium, Professor Chun, well past 50, held a lesson plan and looked at me in astonishment. After a brief dead silence around me, the whole room erupted in laughter. "Ha ha ha, has Li Fan gone crazy from sleeping? Even a top student sleepwalks in class, and shouting about some crystal? Been gaming too hard, huh? This is hilarious. Did he dream someone stole his resources in a ranked match?" The noisy chatter rang around my ears, and I froze completely in place, my mind utterly blank. I raised a hand to touch my cheek. It was smooth and flat. The hideous scar that had run through my face and accompanied me through 8 years of the apocalypse had completely vanished. I blinked, my eyes clear and bright, no longer the crippled state of seeing with only one eye. Subconsciously, I mobilized the power inside me, trying to gather energy and activate divine speed, but there was nothing inside me at all. Not the slightest fluctuation of an ability, none of the ever-present sense of danger from the apocalypse, only a peaceful and stable feeling of ease. I pinched my thigh hard, and a sharp, vivid pain instantly shot through me, real beyond doubt. Could it be that those 8 years of mountains of corpses and seas of blood, betrayal and slaughter, that apocalyptic dead end where everyone died together, had only been an absurd and endless nightmare of mine? But Su Jiangwo's desperate act of protecting his master, Fan Yuyu's heartfelt confession, the vivid smiling faces of the squad, Liu Hang's vicious scheming, and Yuan Ruoshue's fatal betrayal. Every scene felt incomparably real, unforgettable, heart-wrenching, and utterly unlike a dream. I looked around blankly, my heart full of confusion, asking myself over and over, who am I? Where am I? Am I Li Fan, the apocalyptic survivor who struggled for 8 years, or Li Fan, the top junior student living a stable college life? Was that hopeless post-apocalyptic wasteland a real experience, or just a fleeting dream? Professor Chen at the podium came back to his senses, picked up his teacup, and took a leisurely sip, then joked with a smile. Student, who stole your crystal in your dream? Do you need the teacher to help you get it back with legal aid? I still stood there in a daze, my mind in utter chaos, completely unsure how to resolve the awkwardness of the moment. The former post-apocalyptic captain, once decisive in battle and hardened by survival in desperate situations, was now dying of embarrassment in class, completely at a loss. My deskmate and best buddy Ko Peng quietly tugged at my sleeve and whispered some advice. Hey, come on, your mouth says no, but your body is honest. Stop spacing out and hurry up and pretend to faint to muddle through this. I was speechless, black lines all over my face, and muttered back. The room is kept at a constant 21 degrees, with perfect ventilation and lighting, and I'm built like an ox. Who'd believe I fainted? That's complete nonsense. Just as I was forcibly sorting through my chaotic thoughts, trying to distinguish reality from dream, a tearing pain suddenly shot through my brain. Li Fan's eyes rolled back, and he fell stiffly to the ground, putting on a perfect zombie flop for everyone. Thud! My head made intimate contact with the floor, and the sound was incredibly loud. The classroom instantly fell silent, and the students were so shocked their mouths could fit an egg. Who knew you had this side to you? Professor Chen even forgot to pick up the cup of water he had poured, and after standing there stunned for quite a while, he finally came to his senses. Li Fan was the student he thought most highly of. He had only meant to criticize him a little and let it pass. He hadn't expected the kid to go this far. Then he shook his head helplessly, waved at Ko Peng, the deskmate, and said, Go, take him to the infirmary. Don't let him really smash his brain. Ko Peng quickly grabbed Li Fan's arm and helped him out of the classroom toward the infirmary. Inside the infirmary, Li Fan lay on the bed, still unconscious. Only after helping Li Fan out of the classroom did Ko Peng realize Li Fan hadn't been pretending to faint. He had really fainted, which scared Ko Peng badly. After a series of examinations by the school doctor, the result was excessive late nights and mental exhaustion. The brain had activated an automatic protective mechanism. He just needed more rest. Only then did Ko Peng finally relax. Ko Peng had been Li Fan's roommate and classmate for 3 years in college. The two got along very well and were quite compatible, so they had a great relationship. Ko Peng also knew about Li Fan's family situation. Li Fan had grown up in an orphanage. After the orphanage shut down, he was adopted by the director and his wife. Li Fan had always been sensible since childhood. Whether in his studies or in the way he conducted himself, he was outstanding, always giving people an impression of optimism and confidence. There wasn't the slightest trace of inferiority or timidity from having grown up in an orphanage. His excellent academic performance earned him direct admission to the nationally renowned Northwestern Polytechnical University. Li Fan's excellence was inseparable from the loving upbringing he received from the director and his wife. Unfortunately, good people do not live long. In the second month after Li Fan reported to college, the couple died in a car accident. From then on, Li Fan truly became an orphan. This sleep lasted for more than 3 whole hours. Rubbing the back of his head, Li Fan sat up on the infirmary bed and asked groggily, Where am I? The furnishings of this infirmary were clearly familiar, yet they also gave Li Fan a strange sense of distant unfamiliarity. It felt like returning to your hometown after 7 or 8 years. Ko Peng poured Li Fan a cup of water and said, The infirmary. You're really something. Actually took the fall. What were you up to last night? You even dared to sleep in old Chen's class? Holding the cup in one hand, Li Fan touched his left eye with the other, feeling that real sensation. Still not reassured, he took out his phone, turned on the camera, and looked at that youthful and handsome face. The heart that had been hanging in suspense gradually settled. He let out a soft sigh and said, Did I have a dream? Ko Peng teased, a dream? Dreamed that Shaun stole your crystal in your promotion match? Cut the crap. The words on the tip of his tongue were swallowed back by Li Fan. If what happened in the dream was bound to happen, then he definitely couldn't tell Ko Peng. Thinking about how he had lived like a dog in that dream, being chased all over the mountains, and in the end, even being sold out by his own brother and the person closest to him, Then having no choice but to smash the cauldrons and sink the boats, fight to the death, and jump off a cliff to commit suicide. He had really been too pathetic. You don't even dare to daydream boldly. With your LOL skills, just stop playing. Someone who can drag me from diamond down to bronze. Please stay away from LOL. Thank you. If you've got something to say it. If not, get lost. Okay, if you're fine, I'm heading out first. It's almost noon, and I need to go bring lunch to my goddess. Having said that, Copeland got up and walked out. When he reached the door, he turned around and added, "All right, your little sister Roashua just called you." I answered it. "She heard you fainted and was really worried about you. Remember to call her back." The sound of the door closing rang out, and Li Fan was left alone in the room. He lay back down on the bed, his thoughts unsettled, struggling over whether he should return the call. Was that really just a dream? That sense of reality had too great an impact on him. If it were before, the moment he heard that Roashua had called him, he would definitely have called back immediately. After all, in this world, Yuan Roashua was now his only family. Yuan Roashua was the biological granddaughter of Yuan Feng, the commander-in-chief of the Yanjing military region. At the age of 5, she was kidnapped by traffickers and taken to Chang'an. The traffickers happened to run into a severe public security crackdown, so they casually abandoned her. After wandering for half a month, she was eventually taken to the police station by a kind person. Because the DNA database was still underdeveloped at the time, and it was a cross-province case, her parents were not found. So she could only be temporarily transferred to the orphanage run by Li Fan's adoptive parents, and that was how she met Li Fan. By that time, Yuan Roashua had already spent half a year in the traffickers' hands, and her personality had become withdrawn and autistic. She wasn't close to anyone in the orphanage at all, and was completely a problem child. Only with the cheerful Li Fan did she develop an inexplicable closeness. In those years at the orphanage, Yuan Roashua had practically become Li Fan's personal tag-along, going to class together, sitting together at meals, and even insisting on sleeping together. It wasn't until 6 years later, when Yuan Roashua was 12, that the Yuan family found her and took her back to Yanjing. But her contact with Li Fan's family never ceased, and they still visited each other during holidays and festivals. After all, it was thanks to Li Fan's adoptive parents taking her in that Yuan Roashua hadn't ended up on the streets. Ever since his adoptive parents passed away, Yuan Roashua had become Li Fan's emotional anchor in terms of family affection. But that dream left Li Fan feeling inexplicably irritable. Holding his phone and looking at that familiar number in his contacts, he was deeply conflicted. While Li Fan was still engaged in this internal struggle, his phone rang. It was Yuan Roashua. After hesitating for a long time, he finally chose to answer first. "Hello, brother, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Sensing that Li Fan's attitude was unusually cold, the person on the other end asked anxiously, "Did something happen to you? Are you sick? Did you go to the hospital for an examination?" "No." "Wait, what's wrong with you exactly? You're definitely hiding something from me." "I already said I'm fine." Li Fan grew more and more irritable. If it were before, he would never have snapped at Yuan Roashua like this. Yuan Roashua also seemed confused by Li Fan's inexplicable attitude. "Brother, I have class. I'll contact you again in a few days." With that, he hung up the phone. The pain that dream had brought him was so real that he truly had no way to treat her the way he used to. Even though those things had not yet happened, he had to break free from the influence of that nightmare as quickly as possible and return to normal life. So he got up and left the infirmary. As for what would happen later, that could be dealt with later. Li Fan's adoptive parents were wealthy locals in Chang'an. Because they had suffered physical injuries and had no children, when they reached middle age and came to understand life, they sold their factory and opened a fairly large orphanage. After his adoptive parents passed away, they left Li Fan a house, a residential plot, and a 1,100 square meter medium-small supermarket, which someone was managing for him. Leaving the infirmary, Li Fan went straight back to his home in Chang'an. Ever since his adoptive parents passed away, he had rarely returned. Opening the door felt like opening a long-sealed music box. This place held memories of his childhood. It was a commercial apartment near the bell tower, a top-floor duplex on the 15th and 16th floors. The 15th floor had an area of 160 square meters. The 16th floor had an entertainment room, a gym, and a 60-square-meter terrace planted with all kinds of flowers and greenery. In that dream, in the early days of the apocalypse, the house had been occupied by a local tough guy from the residential complex, while he had holed up in the storage room of the small supermarket and survived the scorching summer. Luckily, it was just a dream. Everything was still in his hands. Over the next few days, Li Fan seemed to have truly returned to the course of his original life. It was just that whenever he went somewhere, the ruined scenes from that dream would pop into his mind from time to time. Every place, every detail, was incomparably clear. With National Day approaching, students in 2s and 3s were discussing how to enjoy the holiday. In the school cafeteria, Ko Peng, while dealing with the braised ribs on his tray, asked Li Fan, "Li Fan, how are you planning to spend National Day?" Li Fan was seriously enjoying the food. Maybe it was because of that dream, but the school cafeteria food that used to taste awful now always gave him an inexplicable sense of happiness. Hearing Ko Peng's question, he casually brushed it off. "I'll spend it however it comes, I guess. Aren't you going to look for Yuan Ruoxue?" "No." Ko Peng set down the rib he had already conquered and stared solemnly at Li Fan as he said, "Has something happened to you lately? I just feel like you've changed a bit." "Changed? How have I changed?" Li Fan was completely unconcerned. He didn't even raise his head and continued enjoying the food. "You've become a bit cold. The old you was warm toward the people around you, but now you give people a sense of distance. Sometimes the look in your eyes is very cold." Li Fan froze for a moment. He knew what Ko Peng was talking about. Just the day before, the two of them had gone out to buy things, and on the way a disabled child had fallen right in front of Li Fan, yet he had merely glanced over coldly and walked past. If it had been before, Li Fan would definitely have offered help immediately. That kindness was carved into his bones because he was an orphan and someone had held an umbrella over him in his darkest time. So he had always wanted to become someone capable of holding an umbrella over others as well. Thinking back on it now, he really had changed. That dream seemed like a nightmare, affecting him every moment, and he simply hadn't realized it. Looking at the chubby guy across from him, his closest brother during college, he decided to steer around the topic because even he himself didn't know how to explain his current state. So he smiled and said, "I'm fine. By the way, how are you planning to spend National Day?" The moment National Day plans were mentioned, Ko Peng's attention was immediately diverted, and he said excitedly, "The day after tomorrow, come with me to the astronomy club. I heard the astronomy club recently acquired a very special meteorite from outer space. I'm planning to ask out the goddess again and go take a look together. If I can get the goddess to agree tomorrow, I'm planning to take it a step further and ask her out for National Day." Ko Peng was an astronomy enthusiast, a diehard one. His dream was to become an astronaut and enter the National Space Administration, so he paid special attention to things from outer space. But Li Fan wasn't very interested and casually replied, "We'll talk about it then." He hurriedly finished lunch. There were no major classes in the afternoon. Today was the 3rd anniversary of his adoptive parents' death, and Li Fan was going to pay his respects, so after saying goodbye to Ko Peng, he left. That afternoon, at Tianfu Cemetery, Li Fan knelt before his adoptive parents' tombstone, offered incense, burned paper money, and wiped the tombstone clean. After completing the whole routine, Li Fan did not leave, but instead sat in front of the tombstone in a daze. It felt like something was missing, but he just couldn't remember what. It was as if this scene of him coming to pay respects to his parents had happened before, yet it still seemed like something was lacking. Could it be the Mandela effect? At that moment, Li Fan suddenly discovered that everything before his eyes had turned fiery red. Looking around, everything within sight was dark red. It wasn't the fiery red of a sunset glow, but as if the sun had put on red-tinted lenses, turning heaven and earth dark crimson. Li Fan jumped to his feet in excitement, his heart surging. Right. This is it. The sky full of red clouds. It was in the dream too. In that dream, Li Fan clearly remembered that on the afternoon of the 3rd anniversary of his adoptive parents' death, on a day of blazing sunshine, the sky had suddenly changed color. It cast the entire Eurasian continent in red. Although it lasted less than half an hour, it covered the entire area reached by sunlight. Afterward, the expert's explanation was that it was caused by abnormal radiation from a solar flare refracted through the atmosphere. They said it was a normal celestial phenomenon and advised the public not to panic. Li Fan stared blankly at the sun, which looked almost as if it were hibernating. Looking directly at it did not feel blinding at all, and his mind was filled with countless thoughts. So that wasn't a dream, definitely not. This scene was in the dream too. Li Fan knew this was not the normal phenomenon the expert spoke of. This was the source of all disasters. Starting today, the sun had entered the collating phase. That was a metaphor later given by an astronomy professor. This astronomical phenomenon was like a coal stove that was already in its burning stage, and then a large amount of coal was added to it, after which it would enter a rekindling stage. But as for what exactly caused it, even by the time Li Fan died, research departments around the world still had no definitive conclusion. If Li Fan remembered correctly, over the next 15 days, the temperature would drop to around 7 degrees Celsius, and then after the sun rekindled, it would rise sharply. From 7 degrees Celsius, increasing by 7 or 8 degrees every day. In less than 10 days, the temperature would reach 60 degrees Celsius. Then this sustained high temperature would directly cause the polar ice caps at both the North and South poles to melt rapidly, carrying with it a virus that had been frozen on Earth for countless hundreds of millions of years into the ocean. Once the sun's rekindling period ended, what awaited Earth would be a full month of rain and snow, with the temperature plunging again to minus 40 degrees Celsius. What these rain and snow brought was not only cold, but also the final straw that crushed the order of human civilization, the Tyluo virus. This virus was the true native inhabitant of Earth, existing even before the Ice Age. In the face of this virus, humanity was completely helpless. The infected would either degenerate into primitive beasts that had lost human consciousness, retaining only the instincts for bloodlust and feeding. Survivors named them zombies. Or they would withstand the virus's erosion and struggle to survive in the apocalypse. Of course, there was also a small number of lucky people whose cells assimilated with the virus, unlocking hidden genetic locks in humans. These people were called ability users. Li Fan's ability had not awakened on its own. It was only after he went to the Yenjing shelter and received an awakening serum from Yuan Ruoxua that he awakened the rare space jump ability. He didn't know how long he had stood there or how long he had watched, until the crimson glow filling the sky faded and Li Fan's turbulent thoughts gradually calmed. He turned around, looked at his adoptive parents' tombstone, his whole aura turning icy, and said to the tombstone, "Mom, Dad, I'm back again. That whole set of teachings you gave me about just doing good deeds without asking about the future was too stifling to live by and too stifling to die by. Your son has been unfilial. Point 0, I'm preparing to live a different way." With that, he kowtowed 3 times to the tombstone, rose to his feet, and left the cemetery with firm strides. Since he knew the early course of the apocalypse, there were still many things he needed to prepare next. This time, he would put away his cheap saintly compassion and stop thinking about doing his part to end the apocalypse. Instead, he would become someone free and unrestrained, living only for himself. Living supplies, a fortified residence, and of course weapons for self-protection. In the apocalypse, the most terrifying things were not only zombies and mutant beasts, but something even more terrifying, people. Thinking of his previous life, he had followed the principles his parents had taught him by word and example and believed he had helped quite a few people. But what he got in return was all kinds of plunder, killing, and betrayal. If he hadn't been a bit clever and cautious, he would have died who knew how many times over by now. Returning to the city, he immediately went to the small supermarket his parents had left him. This had originally been the little business his parents intended to leave him for retirement, located in the street-facing storefront of the residential complex where Li Fan lived. This residential complex had been developed and built by his father's friend, so his adoptive father had bought this best storefront at a friends and family price. Of course, Li Fan's current home was also the best unit in the complex, the Crown Jewel building. The supermarket covered an area of 800 square meters. There is also a 200 square meter warehouse in the back. Back then, Li Fan spent the scorching heat period in this very place and was almost literally roasted to death here. The supermarket employed 19 people, split into morning and evening shifts, with 8 people per shift, a team leader, a cleaner, 2 cashiers, 1 person in the produce section for weighing and labeling, 1 inspector, 1 security guard, and 1 store manager. The store manager was a divorced young beauty named Wang Xueli. She had been helping manage all the supermarket's operations ever since it opened. She was highly capable and handled things swiftly and decisively. Even though it was just a small supermarket, its monthly profit was no less than 200,000. Arriving at Wang Xueli's office door, he knocked. "Come in. Sister Xueli busy?" Only when Wang Xueli heard Li Fan's voice did she raise her head from the pile of purchase orders on her desk. Seeing Li Fan, she teasingly said with a smile, "The little boss has come to inspect the work. Why didn't you give me a heads up in advance?" Li Fan got straight to the point and said, "Sister Xueli, I'm not here to inspect the work. I have something I want to discuss with you." "What is it?" Li Fan paused briefly to gather his thoughts, then said, "Sister Xueli, let's suspend the orphanage sponsorship for now. I'm planning to give all employees 1 month of paid leave." Wang Xueli was instantly stunned and looked at Li Fan in disbelief as she asked, "Ah? Why? What holiday is there to take time off for? What about the supermarket?" Of course, Li Fan wouldn't tell her that the apocalypse was coming. If he told her the truth, she would probably drag him to the hospital right away to check whether something was wrong with his brain. Isn't National Day coming up soon? Everyone has worked hard these past years. It's time to give everyone a long vacation to relax. As for the supermarket, we'll close temporarily for reorganization. Although Wang Shuili felt surprised by this decision, she did not object. After all, what employee wouldn't want paid leave? She then said with a smile, "Then I'll thank the little boss on everyone's behalf first." "You're welcome. By the way, Sister Shuili, arrange a meeting with all the suppliers. I want to get together with them." Wang Shuili was very puzzled. The little boss basically never involved himself in supermarket matters. Although all the suppliers knew there was a young boss named Li Fan, they rarely had any contact with him. She handled all purchasing and deliveries herself. Could it be that he was dissatisfied with her work and was preparing to take over personally? She immediately asked, "Little boss, what are you planning to do? Are you dissatisfied with your sister in some way?" Li Fan quickly waved his hands and explained, "Sister Shuili, you've misunderstood. It's not about the supermarket. A classmate of mine is starting an online media company. You know, the kind that does live stream sales. Their shipment volume is huge, and now they want to find some suppliers of daily necessities. Knowing I own a supermarket, he handed this job to me." After hearing this, Wang Shuili relaxed, patted her full chest, and said with a smile, "You gave your big sister quite a scare. All right, I'll do as you arrange." After discussing the supermarket matters, Li Fan left the supermarket. "All right, I'll make the appointments now. Since we're doing inventory tomorrow anyway, let's schedule it for tomorrow. Do you have classes tomorrow?" "In the morning. After the inventory is finished, suspend business, and you all can go on vacation." There were still half a month left before the solar rekindling period. Once the temperature completely reached 60 degrees Celsius, the whole world would enter a phase of work stoppage and school suspension. Before that, he had to prepare his survival fortress and living supplies. The survival fortress was easy enough. Li Fan already had an idea. Not far from the residential complex, there was a piece of land covering 500 square meters. It had originally been his adoptive parents' ancestral property. It was originally meant for building a villa, and the building approval procedures and planning had all been arranged through connections. Unfortunately, before construction could begin, his adoptive parents died in a car accident. To the south of this plot was the Liyuan mountain range, and not far to the left was the residential complex. For the first few days of the scorching heat stage, the power supply could barely be maintained. By the 10th day, electricity was rationed, with power supplied only during certain time periods. Air conditioners became mere decorations. As soon as the scorching heat ended, the blizzard phase began immediately, leaving humanity no time at all to react. So the fortress he had to build had to be a residence with very strong insulation. Based on his 8 years of apocalyptic experience, building an underground fortress was the most suitable option. The most critical issue now was getting money. His parents had prepared $5 million in retirement funds. Although he had already inherited it under his own name, he had not used a single cent of it. However, that money was still not enough. So Li Fan was preparing to trick someone, the dirt-hauling boss scumbag who had occupied his house in his previous life, Xieta Biao. Xieta Biao was a resident of building number 1 in the complex, and was a well-known figure throughout this area. He had gathered a group of underlings and ran a series of shady businesses, including hauling construction waste, loan sharking, and illegal gambling dens. In the Beiqing area, everyone feared him. He was known as the underground emperor of Beiqing. In his previous life, Li Fan had nearly been driven to death by this scumbag. It seemed that in this life, he'd have to start with him. Xieta Biao had always had his eye on Li Fan's supermarket storefront and wanted to buy it at a low price. When his adoptive parents were still alive, he had already harassed them about it many times. Li Fan returned home and found the property certificates for the storefront and this duplex apartment. He silently calculated how these two properties could be made to serve the greatest possible purpose. That entire afternoon, Li Fan openly carried the two property certificates in and out of major banks. Anyone could tell at a glance that this was someone preparing to mortgage property for a loan. In fact, after entering the bank, Li Fan did not go handle any business at all, because the bank's mortgage loan approval process was far too slow and there wasn't enough time. Going to the bank was just for show, waiting for the fish to bite. But as it looked like the banks were almost about to close, no one had shown up yet. Logically speaking, Xieta Biao's underlings would usually keep watch near the banks for people coming to get loans, then introduce those in urgent need of money to borrow loan shark money from them. So where were they now? Where had they gone? Li Fan checked the time. It was already bank closing time. It seemed he would have to go find them himself. But if he did that, the initiative would no longer be in his hands. Just as he walked out of the bank doors holding the property certificates, a wiry little punk with a pointed face, yellow hair, tight pants, and bean shoes came up to him and asked with a sly grin, "Isn't this little Lee? So getting a loan?" Li Fan looked at this flashy youngster, his expression unchanged, but inwardly he was overjoyed. He knew this kid. He was Biao's cousin's son, Zhou Qiang. Clearly, after acting all afternoon, the fish had finally taken the bait. Li Fan gave Zhou Qiang a distrustful look and said, "Yeah, I'm about to graduate, so I'm preparing to start a business with some classmates and set up a media base. We need a large sum of money." Zhou Qiang walked up with a smile, put an arm around Li Fan's shoulders, and asked, "Things not going smoothly? The amount I need is too large, and the approval time is too long. Ah, never mind. I'll go look for that classmate of mine. I heard he has connections." With that, he turned to leave. Zhou Qiang looked at the 2 property certificates in Li Fan's hand and hurriedly chased after him. Zhou Qiang had long since told his uncle about Li Fan going to the bank for a loan. His uncle's strict order was to find a way to pull Li Fan into borrowing from their company. How could he let him go that easily? Following behind Li Fan, he eagerly introduced, "Little Li, why go far when what you need is close at hand? My uncle has a lending company. As long as the collateral is valuable enough, borrow as much as you want. We have as much as you need." Hearing this, Li Fan stopped and slowly turned around, still speaking in a distrustful tone. "Really? The amount I want to borrow isn't small. Don't worry, in our Chang'an prefecture, aside from the 4 major banks, our company is the fastest at lending, offers the highest limits, and provides the best service." Li Fan inwardly sneered and interrupted, "I want to borrow 100 million. Can you come up with it?" Gah. Cough, cough, cough. Zhou Qiang had been talking a blue streak, but when he heard that number, he nearly choked on his own saliva. How much? 100 million. Li Fan deliberately pretended to be displeased and frowned as he said, "What's wrong? Can't handle it? Sigh, I knew it. For this kind of large loan, small companies usually can't come up with the money. I'm leaving." After saying that, Li Fan didn't look back. He directly hailed a taxi and went home. Watching the taxi drive away, Zhou Qiang came to his senses and quickly pulled out his phone and made a call. Very soon a voice came from the other end of the line. "Xiangzi, did you get it done?" "Uncle, this matter is a bit beyond expectations." "What happened?" "Uncle, Li Fan wants to borrow a bit too much." I didn't dare agree. How much could a college student possibly borrow? I was worried he'd borrow too little. The more he borrows, the more I can keep him under my thumb. What's there to be afraid of? No matter how much he wants to borrow, agree to it. Zhou Qiang hemmed and hawed for a long while before finally squeezing out 2 words. 100 million. TCH, it's only 100 million, agree to it. How much? 100 million. Has he gone crazy? Are you sure you heard right? He told me so himself, and he even thought we didn't have that kind of capability, so he left right away. Biao on the other end of the phone was silent for a long time before saying, "All right, stay out of this. I'll talk to him myself." After saying that, Biao hung up the phone and sat on the sofa, holding a beautiful female college student in his arms as he muttered, "What exactly is this orphan trying to do? 100 million. Does he even have any concept of what 100 million means? Looks like I'll have to make the trip myself." He looked at the female college student in his arms, trembling like a quail, and said, "Girl, you did well. I'll give you another month." The girl replied indistinctly, "Thank you, Brother Biao. I'll pay back the money as soon as possible. If you still can't pay it back in a month, I'll arrange for you to work at my nightclub. TSK, your technique still needs more practice. Your teeth hurt me." Meanwhile, after Li Fan got home, he took out more than a dozen sheets of A4 paper and drawing tools. He was going to draw up the design plans for the underground fortress, roughly sketching it out based on his memory and some of his own ideas. Then tomorrow he would find professionals to organize and refine it. The underground fortress would have 4 basement levels and 2 above-ground floors, plus a fully fortified 4-meter-high watchtower. Only 2 270-degree firing ports would be left at the front and back. The 4 underground levels would each have an area of 500 square meters, with a total height of 30 meters and a single floor height of 7.2 meters. The reason for designing it this tall was, first, to facilitate the storage of daily supplies. Each floor would have 3,500 cubic meters of storage space. Second, the deeper the underground fortress, the better the heat resistance. And the most crucial point was, when his parents had someone design the villa back then, both the designer and the geological survey personnel had suggested that the foundation should not be too deep, because there might be an underground water vein in this area, and it was best not to exceed 30 meters. Li Fan wanted to directly tap into the underground water vein, then build a diversion device on the lowest level. Although it would cost a bit more, it would solve the most important problem, the water supply. As he wrote and drew, it was unconsciously already past 7 p.m. After checking everything several times and adding in all the facilities he could think of, he also made a list of supplies, materials he planned to buy from several suppliers tomorrow. Now all he had to do was wait for Xie to come knocking. Sure enough, Li Fan was not disappointed. Just as he finished organizing the sketch plans and the list, there was a knock at the door. Opening it, he saw Xie with Zhou Qiang and a woman holding his arm, who looked very familiar. The woman was also slightly stunned when she saw Li Fan, but she did not make a sound. She quickly averted her gaze, trying to minimize her presence. Li Fan also did not pay much attention to the woman. For someone like Xie, it was not strange for any kind of woman to appear by his side. Li Fan looked at Xie and asked, though he already knew the answer, "Uncle Xie, do you need something from me?" Xie put on the smile of an elder and said warmly, "Shaoli, won't you invite your uncle in to sit for a while? After all, we've been neighbors for so many years." Li Fan stepped aside and, smiling, let them into the living room. Then he asked, "Uncle Xie is a busy man. What brings you to me? I heard from Zhou Qiang that you've run into some trouble recently." Li Fan waved his hand indifferently and said, "It's not really any big trouble. I'm graduating soon, right? A few classmates and I are preparing to start an online media company, and we also want to build a media base. The investment may be a bit large, so I'm planning to take out a loan. I was just on the phone with my classmate. He's introducing me to 2 financiers tomorrow. It shouldn't be a big problem." Hearing this, Xie grew anxious inside, but said calmly, "You're such a child. When your parents were still alive, our families were quite close, and I even had business dealings with them. How could you not come to your uncle when something came up? You're being too polite with me. Uncle Xie, you've misunderstood. It's just that this time the funding gap is too big, and the investment risk is also very high. If I borrowed from you and couldn't pay it back, wouldn't that make you suffer a loss?" As soon as Xie heard this, his face stiffened and he said, "What kind of talk is that? Don't go looking for anyone else. However much you want to borrow, your uncle will handle it for you. If you borrow from someone else and can't pay it back, do you know whether their methods are clean or dirty? You're just a college student with no relatives. What if someone does something nasty to you?" Li Fan immediately put on a somewhat timid expression. He naturally caught the threatening undertone in Xie words and said awkwardly, "But I've already agreed to meet them at noon tomorrow, and backing out now wouldn't be very good, would it? It's fine. If I get it settled for you tonight, won't that solve it? In the northern part of Chang'an, my name carries weight." Li Fan pretended to look very troubled, yet forced to comply, and said, "But I want to borrow 100 million. Hearing this number again, Xie hesitated a little. It wasn't that he couldn't come up with that much money. If he squeezed, he could still scrape it together. It was that Li Fan's 2 properties, plus the 1,000 square meter supermarket. Judging by storefront prices in this prime location, it was estimated at about 80,000 per square meter, so the total value should be around 80 million. And this top-floor residence, priced at 30,000 per square meter, with 2 levels and 320 square meters, should total around 10 million. The total market value was 90 million. This meant the assets were insufficient to cover the debt. Although both properties still had plenty of room for appreciation, especially that storefront, how could he ever do a money-losing deal? After calculating for a long time, he finally said, "Shaoli, you're planning to use these 2 properties as collateral, right?" Li Fan nodded. "Sai, you're still too young. You've never taken out a loan before, have you? These 2 properties can't be used to borrow that much money. A credit company can't give you that, and a bank definitely can't either. How about this? Your uncle will lend you 80 million. That's already the maximum limit. You absolutely won't get a higher amount anywhere else." When Li Fan heard this, he was already overjoyed inside. Of course, he knew 100 million was absolutely impossible. Even a bank would only lend you 70% of the property's value. The reason he had floated the figure of 100 million was to raise Xie psychological expectation. He had thought Xie would offer 60 million, but unexpectedly, it was 20 million more than he had anticipated. Though he was happy inside, his face showed only worry, and he asked uncertainly, "Uncle Xie, is it really impossible to borrow 100 million? Xie said with absolute certainty that it was impossible. "You should have already asked the bank too." After hesitating for a long time, Li Fan finally sighed and said, "All right then, but can the money arrive tonight?" Otherwise, it'll be hard for me to answer to my classmates tomorrow. Xie Biao shot Zhou Qiang a look. Zhou Qiang took out 2 contracts that had been printed in advance from his chest and placed them in front of Li Fan. When your uncle handles things, you can rest assured. Sign the contract and the money will arrive in minutes. Li Fan did not hesitate and signed his name. The loan term was 3 months, with interest of 10 million. Xie Biao also did not delay and transferred 80 million. Then Li Fan reluctantly handed over the property certificates. After getting the property certificates, Xie Biao's mouth nearly split to his ears with his grin. He said, "Xiao Li, your uncle is taking care of you, so I won't deduct the 10 million interest from your principal. In 3 months, you repay 90 million. If you can't, then your uncle will take these 2 properties to settle the debt." Li Fan looked at the property certificates in Xie Biao's hand and nodded reluctantly without saying a word. Xie Biao got up with the other 2 and left. As they were leaving, the woman beside Xie Biao gave Li Fan a meaningful look before following them out. The moment the door closed, the look of reluctance on Li Fan's face vanished completely, replaced by a mocking smile. 3 months? Let's see if you can even survive 3 months first. After returning home, Xie Biao thought it over carefully, always feeling that something about this matter was off. But he just couldn't figure out what was wrong. Seeing Xie Biao's worried expression, Zhou Qiang asked, "Cousin uncle, what's wrong?" "I don't know. I just feel like there's something strange about this kid. He gives off a feeling I can't quite put into words. In the past, whenever he saw me, although he was polite on the surface, there was awe in his eyes. But just now when I spoke with him, although he acted very politely, the feeling he gave me was very unpleasant, like I was being looked down on. Cousin uncle, aren't you overthinking it? You only had to scare him a little just now, and he caved. He borrowed however much you told him to. He's still afraid of you." Xie Biao shook his head. After all, as someone who had risen to prominence in the underworld, he could catch even subtle changes in expression. So he instructed, "For the time being, don't stake out the bank anymore. Find someone to keep an eye on him for me and see what he's been up to lately. Report to me at all times." "Okay, cousin uncle." After saying that, Zhou Qiang kept casting lecherous glances at the female college student beside Xie Biao. Xie Biao smiled, pushed the girl toward Zhou Qiang, and said, "Take her and have your fun. Also extend her debt by 1 month." Overjoyed, Zhou Qiang pulled the girl into his arms. The female college student struggled slightly, but when she saw the smiling face of Xie Biao, she instantly quieted down again. She obediently left with Zhou Qiang. Early the next morning, Li Fan arrived at the supermarket. There was still a lot to do today, and the first thing was to give the employees time off. When he entered the supermarket, it wasn't open because the 27th of every month was inventory day at the supermarket. Check the stock levels of incoming and outgoing goods, the sales, damage, and loss situation of each item, and then reconcile the accounts. Determine next month's purchase volume based on the sales of each item. This is a very tedious process. Li Fan didn't bother with it, because no matter how much there was, all of it was only being stored here temporarily. Once the underground fortress was completed, he would move all the goods over. Arriving at the office, Li Fan sat directly in the main seat, where 6 people were already seated on the guest sofa. 2 women and 4 men. Wang Shuili introduced their identities to Li Fan one by one. They were the suppliers for rice, flour, grain, and oil, fruits and vegetables, seafood, poultry, livestock, and fresh meat, daily chemical products, and beverages and snacks. After getting acquainted with them, Li Fan got straight to the point and said, "Everyone, I didn't invite you here today because of the supermarket. Rather, I have a big deal to discuss with you." As soon as he finished speaking, the major suppliers all started talking. "We heard from Manager Wang. It's about online livestream sales, right? We were just talking about it. Sigh, in today's society, if your thinking can't keep up, you'll be eliminated. We've long heard about online livestream sales. We just didn't know how to do it. I've heard that with some online livestream sales, a single livestream in one night can sell goods worth tens of millions. Sales at brick-and-mortar stores really are getting worse day by day. If we don't start changing, old antiques like us will be eliminated." The rice, flour, grain, and oil supplier was a balding, pot-bellied middle-aged man. He asked, "Boss Li, how do you plan to cooperate?" Li Fan took out the materials list he had prepared in advance and handed copies to each of them, saying, "Our media company is relatively large in scale and has a broad scope, so take a look at the items on the list and see how much you can handle. My requirement is that both quality and quantity must keep up. We may develop into long-term partners in the future, so don't try to fool me." They all picked up the list, and the more they looked, the more alarmed they became. Firewood, rice, oil, and salt, fruits and vegetables, dried goods and seasonings, drinks and snacks, cleaning supplies, things that run on land, swim in water, and fly in the sky. There were also flashlights, lighters, power banks, even nails, hammers, screwdrivers, cigarettes and alcohol, red, beer, and white liquor, a full 5 A4 pages, densely packed, leaving them all dumbfounded. How was this online live stream sales? It looked more like little devils entering the village. Just how large was this company? It covered all the necessities of life. After quite a long discussion, they finally determined which goods each would be responsible for. Even so, the 6 major suppliers only covered less than 60% of the supply sources. The beef and mutton supplier was a brawny Guangzhou man in his 40s named Ma Yan. After reading the list, he asked, "Boss Lee, I mainly deal in beef, mutton, pork, and chicken and duck meat. I can also find bulk channels for fresh seafood. But where am I supposed to deliver it? Have you rented a cold storage facility?" Ma Yan's words woke the dreamer. Right. Meat was nothing like rice, flour, grain, and oil. It couldn't be stored for long. He also didn't have a spatial ability. Even in the apocalypse, Li Fan had never heard of a space storage ability. Even if he could get an awakening potion now, it would only be spatial teleportation, not space storage. How to keep it fresh became a major problem. After pondering for a long time, he could only sigh helplessly. How come in those wish fulfillment novels, everyone who transmigrates comes with a space ability, while he had nothing at all and had to start as an ordinary person? How about this, Boss Ma? You should have refrigerated storage, right? I have 4 vacant ones. I could rent them to you. All right, but I also need to ask you for a favor. Help me contact an ice plant. I need a large amount of ice. No problem. My business often deals with ice plants. When do you need it? How much? Li Fan thought it over. This afternoon he would go find the construction team. The underground works had to be completed within 10 days, and the above-ground works within 5 days. Even if he had to pay extra, the underground fortress had to be completed within half a month. So he said, 10 days later, deliver it on time to the foot of the Liyuan Mountains. Our company is doing construction there. Your goods as well, all delivered on the same day. No problem, right everyone? No problem. There's plenty of time. Don't worry, Boss Lee, nothing will be delayed. Next, they discussed each party's share and quantities, signed the purchase contract, and he paid a 30% deposit on the spot, with the remaining balance to be settled after 3 months. Just these deposits alone came to 50 million. After the discussion was over and the suppliers were sent off, Li Fan stopped Wang Xueli and said, "Sister Xueli, how are you planning to spend your holiday?" Wang Xueli was very happy because she hadn't had a proper rest in a long time, so she replied excitedly, "I'm planning to travel to Sanya. Want to come along, little boss?" Li Fan was instantly speechless, inwardly complaining. Going to Sanya now might as well be lining up for a spot at the crematorium. The reason he asked about her plans was that he wanted to remind her to stockpile more living supplies. As for whether she could make it through, that would depend on her own fate. Although Wang Xueli had always taken good care of him, and she was a very nice person, pretty and graceful, Li Fan would never take her with him into shelter. Human nature was the least able to withstand testing. Sister Xueli, things are unsettled lately. I advise you not to go. Stock up on more living supplies, especially water, and just stay at home. Wang Xueli looked at this little brother in confusion and asked, "Did you hear something?" Li Fan nodded and said, "Did you see that red glow yesterday?" Didn't the experts say it was a normal phenomenon?" Sister Xueli, the experts in our country, their mouths are as trustworthy as if they'd eaten laxatives. Can they really be credible? We have an astronomy professor at our school who speculated that there may be huge temperature changes soon. If you trust me, then over the next month prepare more supplies and stay quietly at home binge-watching shows and reading books. Looking at Li Fan's solemn expression, Wang Xueli nodded unconsciously and replied, "Okay, big sister will listen to you, and just stay home. If you have free time lately, come by my place and I'll cook something delicious for you." "Okay, if I have time, I'll come taste Sister Xueli's cooking. I still have things to do, so I'll be going first." After saying that, Li Fan left the supermarket and headed straight for the real estate company of his father's friend. His father's friend was named Su Jiayin, the most famous developer in Chang'an Prefecture, who had made his fortune by riding the boom of the real estate market in previous years. When he was young, he had been comrades in arms with Li Fan's father, and after Li Fan's parents passed away, he also took quite good care of Li Fan. Xie Biao had coveted that storefront property but had never dared to use force, partly because he was wary of Su Jiayin. Arriving at the top floor office of Shooter Real Estate and finding Su Jiayin, before Li Fan could even speak, he was met with a rebuke. You brat. I thought after your parents passed away, you were going to cut off contact with me. What brings you here today? Well, I have something to ask of you. Su Jiayin was taken aback. He had watched this child grow up. He had a gentle and humble personality, was kind and confident, yet was also stubborn beneath a soft exterior. And it was precisely because of this personality that Su Jiayin liked him so much. So when Li Fan said he needed his help with something, he was quite curious and joked. Heh, how strange. A stubborn kid who would rather deliver takeout than use his adoptive parents' inheritance actually has something to ask my help with. Let's hear it. I'm planning to build an online media base, using the plot of homestead land where our old house stands. You're the expert in infrastructure, so I wanted to ask you to help me find a construction team. Huh, that's all. I thought you were going to run for president of Eagle Nation. I'll find you a construction team, and I'll also set you up with a designer, a supervisor, and a geological survey team. Li Fan quickly took out the blueprints he had designed long ago from his backpack, handed them to Su Jiayin, and said, Uncle Su, this is the media base I designed. It has a special purpose, so it's different from an ordinary frame shear wall structure. Please take a look. Su Jiayin took the design drawings and looked through them. The more he looked, the deeper his frown became. What is all this? Are you planning to build a military base? More than 7 meters of story height and 4 underground levels. Li Fan had already thought of how to fool him, so he explained, it's a live stream base. Sometimes we need sets. If the interior is draped with backdrops, a low ceiling definitely won't do. Su Jiayin picked up the desk phone on his office desk and gave an instruction. Before long, a bespectacled man in his 30s walked in. Chairman, you were looking for me. Xiao Chun, this is the son of my comrade in arms. He wants to build some kind of media base. Take a look and see if there are any problems with this design drawing. The designer took the drawing, looked at it for a while, asked about some requirements, and then gave an affirmative answer. All right then, you go handle it yourselves. Have the second engineering team go over there to do it. Meet all his requirements. You brat, come by the house and sit for a while when you're free. Your parents are gone, so don't cut off all your personal connections. You'll need them once you enter society. Li Fan smiled and nodded, then left with the designer. In fact, Li Fan had wanted to remind Su Jiayin, but swallowed the words when they reached his lips. Because from the scorching heat to the zombie tide, Su Jiayin and his daughter had lived quite comfortably, and it wasn't until the great relocation that they got separated from Li Fan. Half an hour later, Li Fan brought the designer to the Liyuan Mountains, pointed at that plot of homestead land, and said, it's this one. Take a look. According to my design drawings, how long will it take? The designer's name was Chen Xiang. He pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose, calculated for a moment, and said, it may take a month. No, that's too long. Can it be completed within half a month? No matter how much we rush, there's no way to finish within half a month. The concrete frame and shear walls can go up quickly, but the later brick infill requires manual labor. Li Fan cut him off directly. No brick infill needed. Pour it all in concrete. Chen Xiang was stunned after hearing this and asked in disbelief. All poured concrete? That would greatly increase the cost. You don't need to worry about that. Just do it all in poured concrete. How long would that take to finish? If it's all poured concrete, it can be completed in about 10 days. Hearing this, Li Fan nodded in relief and put forward his requirements. First, an insulation layer must be laid inside the concrete. Second, that underground water vein I mentioned, the diversion system must be properly arranged for me. Don't worry about the cost. Third, leave several more concealed ventilation openings and hide them well. Fourth, prepare 2 sets of power systems, one connected to municipal power supply and one connected to an internal generator power supply. Fifth, make the sewage treatment system concealed as well. Sixth, the most important thing is the 2 above-ground floors and the watchtower. The concrete grade, I want military grade. Chen Xiang's face, which had already gone numb, finally came back to life when he heard the words military-grade concrete. Military-grade concrete requires filing for approval. Of course, Li Fan knew that military-grade concrete had to be reported to the local police authorities, but for Su Jiayin, that kind of issue was a minor matter. Otherwise, Li Fan would have just found any construction team. So he said in a tone that allowed no objection, just go do it. As for the filing, Uncle Su has a way to handle it. Chen Xiang didn't dare offend Li Fan and immediately agreed. Then he asked, what about the interior finishing? What style are you planning? Just do something simple. The reason for buying so much food and building such a large fortress was to store food. After the 2 months of natural disasters were over, Li Fan would leave the fortress and rescue Fan Yu and the others, his teammates from the early days. Whenever he thought of this, he couldn't help sighing. If only he had some kind of storage space, things wouldn't be so troublesome. He could just put the supplies directly into the space instead of hauling them back and forth. Afterward, he led Li Fan back to the real estate company, where they calculated the cost at 30 million, signed the contract, prepaid 20 million in project funds, and construction started that very afternoon. As soon as Li Fan got home, his phone rang. He saw it was Ko Peng calling. The moment he answered, Ko Peng's wolf-like howl came through the phone. Li Fan, are you crazy? You're already skipping classes now? The instructor called you today, and you didn't answer. He came looking for me several times. I thought something had happened to you. I was already planning to call the police. Listening to Fatty Ko's roaring, Li Fan still felt quite moved and replied with a smile. Something came up today and delayed me. Help me ask for a few days off. Just say I'm not feeling well. Huh, you're taking leave too? Then the thing you promised to go with me to the astronomy club the day after tomorrow. You aren't going to stand me up on that too, are you? Li Fan thought about it. He originally didn't want to go, but then he remembered this fat guy was one of his very few friends. He could give him a reminder then, which would count as doing his duty as a friend. Because Li Fan knew this guy turned into a zombie in the third stage, though he didn't know whether he was an original carrier or was secondarily infected by a zombie. All right, we'll talk by phone the day after tomorrow. That's more like it. Then you have to be my wingman. I finally managed to ask out Lu Rian. Lu Rian. The name sounded very familiar, but Li Fan just couldn't remember who she was. She's the beauty from the art department, my goddess. She agreed to go to the astronomy club with me. But she brought her roommate too, and she's also a great beauty, the topic goddess from the campus forum, Wu Shanshan. You pathetic simp. What the hell do you know? This is called pure love. All right, enough crap. We'll talk when we meet the day after tomorrow. After hanging up, he calculated his funds. The deposit he had prepaid today was 60 million, and he still had 25 million left on hand. There was still gasoline and diesel needed for the generator. Also coal for the fireplace, cold weather clothing, common medicines, and he still needed a modified large truck to make transporting supplies easier. For use during the third stage zombie outbreak, when the city falls and the great relocation begins. The hardest thing to obtain was self-defense weapons. Guns would be best, but he had no connections, so he could only settle for second best and see if he could find a way to get a crossbow. Li Fan took out the list and checked and organized it once again, planning to get the clothing and medicines settled first tomorrow. As for weapons and gasoline, he'd think of a way later. Early the next morning, Li Fan arrived at the largest Times Plaza in Chang'an Prefecture. Like a little Jap entering a village, he swept through and bought up all kinds of clothes for all 4 seasons, from inside to out, especially cold weather down jackets and sports shoes. He arranged for the plaza to deliver everything to his home that afternoon. Next, Li Fan wandered through all the major pharmacies, sweeping up all the common medicines, also arranging home delivery at the same time. After a whole day of shopping, 7 to 8 million was gone. Clothes, bedding, and shoes cost 3 million, and medicines and medical equipment cost 5 million. Next, Li Fan planned to try his luck at the sports equipment market to see if he could get a crossbow, but he kept feeling as if a pair of eyes were watching him. He immediately became alert. Had the things he'd been doing these past 2 days attracted someone's attention? It couldn't be the authorities, could it? Logically, it shouldn't be. So who exactly was tailing him? Without showing any sign of it, he switched routes and headed straight back to the residential complex. But that feeling of being watched was still there. He quickly ran into the fire stairwell, went up to the 4th floor, and looked downstairs through the stairwell window, finally spotting that sneaky figure. When he saw the person's appearance, Li Fan instead relaxed. He recognized this person. He was one of Zhou Chang's lackeys. As long as it wasn't the authorities, it was fine. Right now, nothing had been fully arranged yet, and he didn't want to draw official attention so early. But there were still many things to do these days, and having a tail following behind him all day was really annoying. He couldn't start killing openly yet, so he had to think of a way to cut off this tail. It seemed he needed Xie de Biao to get busy enough that he had no time to pay attention to him. The lackey downstairs watched the unit entrance, and when he saw that Li Fan didn't come out, he turned and left. As he walked out of the residential complex, he was making a phone call, probably reporting the situation. Li Fan rubbed his fingers together, took out a cigarette, and lit it, his eyes flickering. After a long while, Li Fan smiled faintly, flicked away the cigarette, but went home and changed into his adoptive father's clothes, put on a knit cap and a mask, hunched his back, walked out of the complex, hailed a taxi, and headed straight for Bailin District. Bailin District was an urban-rural fringe area, a semi-developed zone where all sorts of shady people mixed together. The red light district and nightclubs were all in this area, and Siete Biao's underground casino was here too, at Red Romance Nightclub. The 4 above-ground floors were for naughty business, and the casino was a secret room converted from the underground garage. Li Fan only found this out after the apocalypse, when Siete Biao occupied his house in the early days before the end, and he accidentally overheard him talking to his underlings. This nightclub was located between 2 districts, with very little surveillance nearby, and there were underlings standing watch, so they could easily deal with every anti-prostitution and anti-crime sweep. The lack of surveillance was exactly what Li Fan wanted. So Li Fan directly sneaked into the underground garage to search for that hidden underground casino. After circling around several times, he still couldn't find the secret casino. Fortunately, Siete Biao hadn't installed surveillance in this underground garage in order not to leave evidence for surprise inspections. Otherwise, Li Fan would have been discovered long ago. But where exactly was the casino? Could it be that he had guessed wrong? Or that it was in the underground garage of one of Siete Biao's other nightclubs? That didn't seem right either. His other 2 nightclubs were both in bustling downtown areas. Siete Biao definitely wouldn't be stupid enough to open an operation in a downtown area. Not to mention that downtown areas are covered with surveillance everywhere. If he ran into a sudden official inspection, the downtown location would definitely be exposed, and he would have been locked up long ago. Just as Li Fan was about to give up and look for another opportunity, an Audi A6 drove in from outside. Li Fan quickly hid behind cover in the fire passage. The Audi stopped directly in front of a wall and honked twice.